Cheers, guys. Epics 911, welcome to the Elitist Geek VR news for Wednesday, October 12th, 2016. So much to talk about with the Steam Valve Dev Days event that's going on right now. It actually started today, that I'm going to probably split out the games into a separate video because also on the game side, a ton of announcements, easily a dozen or more. Just wouldn't make sense to throw that in the same video, so I won't, and I'll edit that same time as I finish the VR strip mall kiosk video. So let's jump right into VR, guys, starting with the just finished Oculus Connect 3. That event now, according to Upload VR, they've made available a 32 video playlist for content from Connect 3. So almost every topic that was covered there, they've got some kind of video for. Check that out in the link below if there's anything there for you. Again, that was the Connect 3 that ran October 5th to October 7th. Next up, Valve Product Designer Greg Coomer. As he's opening the Valve Dev Days, he throws out a tease on an upcoming possible Valve VR game. Now, he didn't get into specifics. Obviously, speculation is going to run amok like it usually does, when somebody teases like this. The sure bets would be, or the sure bet would probably be something along the lines of a full Portal VR game. So we know a couple of months ago there was the basically 15 to 30 minutes, depending on how good you are at puzzle solving, hell, maybe 5 minutes to 30 minutes version of Portal VR, which I loved a lot. I liked it so much, in fact, if that's what they come out with, that would be fine by me, a really meaty Portal VR game. The other option, of course, would be something from the Half-Life universe. Not necessarily Half-Life 3, obviously, but maybe a 2.5 with, modern graphics and a 10 to 15 hour campaign. That would be pretty cool. But until we get more details from them, that's all we can do is speculate. Next news piece, some stealth pics from the conference floor room. Now, apparently, journalists and that weren't allowed to report from it, but that certainly didn't stop these pictures from making the rounds. So have a look at this. This is a prototype for a controller that Valve is working on. And one of the things you're going to notice right away is the strap on the wrist, the fact that there's a little bit of a bar of the controller that comes over the top of the palm, and in the picture specifically, a lot of the devs who've tried this thing mentioned that you could release grip items, which would be great. Because if I had, a single big complaint with the Vive controller, that would probably be it. This, the location of those grip buttons. To the point where had I not had my Vive wrist straps on, letting go of things, I probably would have just let go of the controller, because your brain, your subconscious, you want to release when you release in a game. So if that's what this is actually doing, fantastic. Now, this design could obviously change. This is, after all, just a prototype, but it's nice to see that their focus, is in that direction. Now, a couple of people pointed out that it seems that they're going for the touch aesthetic. It's definitely not a wand / TV remote style controller as what Vive currently has, but I would say the aesthetic, although it's smaller, it looks more touch-ish, is still unique enough, right? But again, until we see something representing the final version, they could go in a completely different tangent or maintain that but change the functionality. So many things are still possible. I imagine in 2017, as we get into that year's events, we're going to hear some more about these prototype controllers. Next news piece, Valve investing a, what they call, quote unquote, significant amount of money in a company that's seeking to make desktop VR wireless. So the company in question is called Nitero, Nitero, and they've been working on 60 gigahertz wireless solutions for VR. Now, this isn't some huge revelation. Most of us guessed because it's pretty obvious that at some point they're going to go wireless. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. So it's nice to see that R&D, like Nitero, is currently active in trying to push VR in that direction. Now, what are the specific benefits of 60 gigahertz? Haven't had the opportunity to check. I will do additional research in that. Check out what some of the latencies are, because that's probably the biggest concern with wireless is latency, because latency can kill a virtual reality experience. But as with the other item, we will find out. Now, what this does seem to confirm is Michael Abrash's, he gave that during the keynote, his vision of the 5-year VR roadmap. You got to admit, this kind of coincides with that perfectly, because wireless VR, again, no big secret, we know this is inevitable, but it fits in at least to the 5-year timeline that Abrash proposed, which is cool. Now we just need those years to go a little quicker so we can get to that point. And I'm sure some of you are probably cursing me out right now after spending the money. I know I'm in that same boat. Let it take its sweet time. Let's just focus on gaming and games and worry about the hardware in 2 to 3 years' time. And I got to agree with that too. Definitely up for some more gaming first. Now, SteamVR statement also during this event that Linux could open up more PCs for virtual reality for the masses. And one of the things that they cite specifically is the fact that there are a lot of versions of Linux that are free and don't cost you anything. So you save that, roughly 125, I think it's $100 US for a Windows 10 Home OEM edition, which can make the difference between a low end and a medium graphic card, or hell, even a medium and an above average video card, because that's probably the single, biggest factor for VR performance, bigger than the CPUs, bigger than memory, bigger than the OS, is the GPU. And once companies start specifically taking advantage of features native to these GPUs, especially the newer ones coming out, both NVIDIA and on the AMD side of the equation, we're going to see even further enhancements in virtual reality and make GPUs even that much more important than they already are. So is that going to change a lot? Or do the benefits of saving $125 and going with Linux, outweigh what you potentially lose on the Windows side of the equation? Now, I say that fairly unbiased. There's always bias, obviously, but I generally always have a machine in my house that runs Linux. My uncle and I set up my dad with a Linux machine specifically because he was constantly going to sites with malware and viruses. And it's not that they don't exist on the Linux side of things. It's just that, virus writers and malware writers, they're people. And writing for a platform where they're not going to be able to get the same level of kicks as they could from the millions and millions of Windows users just means that there's less. Doesn't mean that they don't exist, right? But so far, things have been stable with him and Linux. But I'm talking more specifically the types of tools that dev companies have come up with to program in Windows that, just don't exist on the Linux side of things. And I don't have the answer to that. Like I said, I can point out that $125 can make a huge difference on the GPU side of things. But what do you miss out by taking that plunge to Linux, right? Because there are things you would have to sacrifice. Don't know the answer to that. Maybe you guys do have some input on that. Let me know in the comments below. Next news piece, Universal Orlando's Haunted Repository. So this is a theme ride / event / experience that's being offered for Halloween. In fact, there's Halloween Horror Nights admission, which basically starts at about $189 and up. You pay an additional $50 for this 30-minute experience. You go in with groups of 4. 10 minutes of that 30 is apparently virtual reality. You have live people that follow you around, touch you at certain points. That could be a little unnerving, right? And actual live sets that they've built for the event that mirror some of what you see in virtual reality. So the potential for probably a really, really cool thing. And let's face it, if you're in a theme park like that, the $50 isn't so bad considering what you've spent already. I mean, just having a meal, and I remember this well, 2008, 2004, we took our kid to Disneyland in California, and just having a couple burgers and drinks, you probably could have paid for the ride, right? But yeah, and 30 minutes doesn't sound too bad. That sounds like a decent amount of time for a ride. Usually they're measured in just minutes. Next news piece, Sprayscape, which is an Android 360-degree app. And essentially what it allows you to do is take your Android phone, take snapshots as you pivot, 360 degrees, and then it shoddily or hastily sews them together into a 360-degree experience, right? Now, obviously, if you're taking different random shots as you pivot around, the borders aren't going to be seamless. That's kind of the charm of the software and the intent. Although you can apparently hold, it down and record a seamed or seamless 360 degree experience that you could then view. So the author on Upload VR stated that this could inspire devs an application like this. I wouldn't go that far. I think it's a cool novelty app, but really, wouldn't you want an actual 360-degree camera instead of something that kind of mimics it and really doesn't mimic it, in my opinion, in a realistic way, right? It's kind of like those face-swapping apps. It's fun for a few times, but is it going to have the staying power, of what a true entry-level 360 could offer you? Personally, I don't think so. Next up, Mel Science. They've created some VR, AR learning tools with some additional funding that went their way. Now, as a kid who was born in the 70s, grew up in the 70s and 80s, there was a 15-year period from about the late 60s to early 80s where chemistry kits were huge. And that's what they're doing. Mel Science is offering virtual chemistry kits. The big reason is kids can't hurt themselves because this is crazy. One of those things when you look back at it and you realize how dangerous it actually was. You could create some pretty nasty things with those kid chemistry kits, right? I remember my buddy, who you guys know as Exidy, on the Friday Night Gaming videos, we spent hours creating quote-unquote poison toxins for darts, right? Don't ask, we were 9 years old. Same 9-year-old kids who somehow knew the concept of fermentation. Remember, this is all pre-internet. We put a bunch of blackberries into a jar with, about a pound of sugar and let it sit for about 3 months in a bush. Thank God we didn't drink it because it smelled so damn nasty. We probably would have gone blind, or ended up in emergency, right? But 9 and 10-year-old kids back then had access to chem kits like this. That's one of those items that you can definitively say, yeah, that would not work in 2016. Maybe supervised with a parent, but other than that, it just has Danger Will Robinson written all over it. Part of what I love about the time I grew up in, I gotta say, right? So anyways, they offer 30 plus virtual kits in their apps for, kids to do exactly that. All kinds of different chemistry and science experiments, different types of reactions, mixes, etc. Next news piece, Ricoh announcing an additional camera to their 360-degree lineup. It's also a mid-range like the Theta S. In fact, identical in every single way to the Theta S camera, except in price. It comes in $50 cheaper. And for that $50 cheaper, you give up one feature, and that one main feature that you give up is an HDMI micro port, which allows you on the Theta S for $350 to stream directly to Facebook or YouTube. You can't do that on the Theta SC version, but other than that, all the specifications are essentially identical. Oh, and some color changes, the aesthetics, right? So check that out in the link below. but just as a quick summary, so $300, and allows for 5 minutes of fully spherical MP4 videos, 1080p, 30 frames per second, and can hold around 1600 5300 by 2700 pixel resolution pictures in JPEG format. All right. And you can upload it to their website and then share it on most mainstream social media sites. Next up, last news story concerning Nolan Bushnell. Now, if you're a gamer and you don't know who his name is, please do me a favor, read a wiki article. He's one of those super important figures in gaming. And I say that jokingly. Sometimes people take me way too seriously. But he is an important figure. He is co-founder of Atari, and Atari was probably, if not certainly right up there with Nintendo as being one of the most pivotal companies in the hobby that we all love of video games, right? So he's popped up again, and he does that every once in a while. He, was also responsible in part for the Chuck E. Cheese franchise. Now he's got a VR unit that he's working on, and he's got someone running as a CEO, a fellow by the last name of Crawford. It's a VR unit called Modal VR, MODAL. It's geared to enterprise level, large scale VR applications. So you could take it to a field. You could have multiple people using this technology playing laser tag, within the dimensions of that environment. Apparently only takes a few minutes to set up and can be used for all kinds of things. Training, tourism, you could capture real life areas. No word on price or when they plan on launching in that article. If I hear more, I will mention it here. But anyways, guys, that's it for the news. As always, cheers, and definitely catch you on the VR flip side, which tomorrow will probably be back in the man cave. Cheers, guys.